Okay, so I'm going to pick fridge pickers as the title for today. For over the last part of this year, I've been doing some work for nzmaths, and I've been updating some of the units of work in the statistics and investigation strand, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about those at the end, but fridge pickers appealed to me partly because of the name and also because it's reasonably interactive in terms of what I want to do for you to be able to go away and do it with students or with other teachers in your school. And if you wanted to do it with other teachers in your school, I'm very happy for you to use my slides as a basis for that. I just want to say the idea is not mine. I've updated an existing nzmaths activity. So the unit that we're looking at to start with uses a fridge as a context, and we're going to look at collecting data and doing dot plots, and we can do bar graphs, and we're also going to learn about using the computer. So I'm going to be getting you to do some stuff during the session, as is my want. And the focus is on planning a statistical investigation and doing all the stages of it. So this is just the stuff from nzmaths. But we're going to get started. So this first session in the activity that's online is it gives an introduction to the whole PPDAC cycle through an investigation into the types of food we like to pick from the fridge. And it also sets the students up to collect some data at home. So that's the first session in the unit of work. So what I'm going to do is, in a moment, I'm going to share this link in the chat. And I just want you to go into the Padlet and write what you think a fridge picker is. So I'm just going to grab that link. Oh, what thing's covering things? I'm going to drop it into the, gosh, hopefully I've got it, into the chat. Now, if I'm going to give you a minute, I'm going to stop my screen share. And I would like you to just go and put some things in there about what you think a fridge picker is. All right, there you go. You can click on the link and go in and put some thoughts in there. So really encourage everyone to put something in. Fridge picker is me. Okay. Right, so I'm going to come back and share my screen. So the idea in the activity is that you actually want to get the students to be thinking about this before we actually get into collecting the data. All right, so we can just see some of the ideas that people have put there. And what I will do in the slides when they're finalised is I'll put these Padlets in there. I'm just going to go back to the slides. So we've had some ideas about what a fridge picker is, and then we can use those ideas there to start to develop some questions that we can use, some survey questions to start to answer this investigative question. So the question I'm interested in answering today, and this is, if you want, from Chris Franklin's thing, this is the statistical investigative question, but in New Zealand we generally just refer to it as the investigative question. There's some politics as to why it's called that in the US. So the question we're trying to answer is, what types of foods do the participants in the fridge pickers workshop like to pick from the fridge? And what we've had as a conversation, and we're really talking about when you go into the fridge and I think you're a little bit hungry and you just pick something out to eat. It's not about you going in to make a meal, but you go to the fridge and you just want to pick something. And Gillian and I were talking earlier about her daughter coming home, and the first thing she does is go to the fridge. And I'm sure many of you have conversations around that. So I've got 2 survey questions that I am going to ask you, and one of them is, what type of food do you like picking from your fridge? And with the students, I would have developed some categories, but I've actually predetermined those just in terms of time. And because I always like to look at more than one thing, I have a second variable in there that I want you to answer, and that's about the position in the family. So we've been doing a lot of work and moving away from gender as a category for comparing to looking at other things. So we're going to look at the position in family, and I'm going to put the link in the chat in a moment and stop sharing my screen, but I've actually got two questions, those two questions in there now, and two questions for later that I want you to answer, but don't get too stressed about them at the moment. We will look at them very shortly. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to put that link into the chat, if I can find the chat somewhere on my many screens. There we go. So if you could go in and just quickly do that survey, that would be wonderful. There we are. If you come in, I'm just going to put the link in again for you to go in and do. I've got 5 responses, so there might be a few more to come. Be much more interesting data for us to work with if we've got everyone. I've got 7. There's 11 of us, and I have done one as well. So if the other people, unless you can't get into the survey, then I understand that. But I'll give you another 30 seconds.
Again.
There's 8, 9. Right, I'm going to reshare my screen. I'm just going to show you quickly what we can see so far, but I'm going to go back to my presentation. All right, so we've got the data, and if I was doing this with students, what I would be doing is actually using some sticky notes and collecting that data from them. And you can see there's an example. I did this, I needed some data, so on Facebook I put the survey up and my friends answered it, which is a bit sad perhaps from some people's perspective. But what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to build the spreadsheet. So that's a bit weird, hopefully it will come right. So I've got somebody who's the oldest and likes dairy. I can start to put this in, hopefully this will focus in a minute. And then I've got the youngest and likes drinks. Oh, I've got one of those. So I'm using the colours yellow for oldest. I've got a drinks there. I've got another oldest who likes dairy. I have some pre-prepared sheets so it wouldn't take us too long. I've got a youngest who likes dairy. And then I've got a middle who likes dairy. And then I have a youngest who likes something sweet. I'll put sweet in there. And then I've got an oldest who likes dairy. There's a bit of a theme going on here. I've got a middle who likes dairy, and I've got a youngest who likes fruit. Okay, so you can see how I can very quickly build up my data display. Sorry, I've got a skylight above me, and that's what that line there is. So I can't actually fix that too much. Okay, so one of the things we're thinking about is how we can quickly display the data. Oops, actually, let me just go back to there. What I was hoping to do is if I can get that to focus, but it's not going to today. My light's playing up. Ah, never mind. What can I do?
Ah.
There we go. Put my hand on it, and now I'm just going to screen grab that because I want us to write about it. Just give me a second. Multitask with my hand on it. Great. Never mind. Okay. No, and go back to my slides, escape. And what you're going to do now is, what I would do with kids is we would have that on the board. So I'm just going to pop this in here now. Here's our picture. And what I'd like you to do in the chat is just write what you notice about the data we have there. Okay? So if you can just write your I notice statements in the chat, and then we'll have a look at some of those. So where's the chat? Where's my chat gone? And the thing that's really nice when we're using I notice statements, which is what is quite a good starter for getting kids to notice things about graphs, is that we can actually just pick everything up and use it. And then later on, we can maybe be a bit more picky about whether what we've been given is relevant to the data we've got. But I think it's, oh, you guys are typing too fast for me now. It does really get kids thinking about what they see in the graphs. And I also find using the term I notice is really useful when you start doing things like looking at algebra patterns. So, if, you know, like reflecting back on Bronwyn's session, which I was at previously, you said to the kids, what do you notice? They might notice things like that the pattern goes up by 4 or the pattern goes up by 8. Okay? So if I was working with the kids in the class, I probably would do this on a whiteboard, or I might do it on a piece of paper and then give them some sticky notes to write their I notice statements on. Okay? So you can see there that we've got, most people chose dairy. We're dependent on dairy. Dairy seems to be the most popular. We noticed that only one likes sweet. And because our data wasn't as exciting as maybe my previous group, we didn't have a lot more to talk about. If I just go back to this one, I'll leave it there. We can see that there was a little bit more going on. Let me just put this onto percent mode. All right, so that was the previous one that I got. And so we might notice some other things, and we may want to rearrange the data. So for example, if I just go back to our data, assuming it will focus in on there, what we could do is we could just rearrange it and have a look at what happens for the different ages. I might just put these side by side for a moment. Is it still in? Oh, it's just, I don't know why it's not. I think it's the bright light. But we can see here, just by rearranging it according to the age, let me just drop it down a little bit. We can see, or the place in the family, we can see that the oldest in our group all like dairy, and same with the middle. But with the youngest people, so you young ones and youngest in the family people in our group, we notice that there's actually quite a variety of things that you like. So just by having the colour, and that allows us to look at the data in a different way, okay? And we can then get some further I notice statements from the students about that. And then just finishing off that session, what we would do is we would then get the students to just answer the investigative question, and they would use evidence from the graph. So they might say the types of food. So what we would say is that nearly, well, you know, I've got over half of the people like dairy, and some of the people who are youngest in their family like fruit, drinks, or something sweet. So we can use that evidence to answer a question. So that first activity in the fridge pickers unit is really just to get the kids thinking about fridges and food and things related to that. So when we move on into the unit of work, there's 3 sessions here that I have, I've updated quite considerably to really ensure that we're getting a good focus on the PPDAC cycle. But the key thing is that we're using that idea of fridges or food as our theme. And we're going to start using Codep as an online tool to display the data. So this is what happens. Oh, I've got a typo there. It should be sessions 2 to 4. So within the unit of work, when you go in, you'll see there that these headings are used. So we start off with a problem. And then in this, for the little activity we're going to do, the problem I'm going to explore is what are the types of fridges we have. And then we talk about the plan. So the students will generate their own questions with your help, but we're going to just do one of them. And then we look at the plan. So we've developed 2 survey questions, which we'll have a look at in a minute, but you've already answered them, so you're aware of them. And then it talks about how you might collect the data. So they might collect that using pen and paper, or they might use it doing electronic. So we use the electronic form. And then we get into the analysis. So we're going to use Codep to make some displays and then describe them. And then the conclusion, which really is about communicating their findings. And in the example in the unit of work, the students present a report or a poster or something about their investigation. I think the key thing about this unit from where it was is there's a real focus on the PPDAC cycle, and I've just dropped in the poster there, and if you can see, it's on my wall as well. I quite like that when I'm online, I can share it. So I just want to talk briefly about the 2 questions. So the 2 questions that are there now is what is the make of your fridge, and then if you have more than one, pick the one that is your main fridge and choose from. And then the second question is what type of fridge do you have? If you have more than one, pick the one is at your main fridge and choose from. So these questions here have been from, so I've developed them obviously, but they've been through a process. So firstly, when I started developing the questionnaire, I thought, well, actually I've got 2 fridges, which one would I choose? You know, because often people have a beer fridge or a wine fridge, depending on your tendency, or they just have a fridge out in the garage because they've got surplus surplus supplies that they can't fit in their main fridge. So that's why that change was. But these choices that are in here, that was based on my initial survey I did with my friends on Facebook. And so I didn't see any point in having a long list of fridge names. I think the one you've got has still got the long list, but the one I've put in the unit of work has a shorter list, and that was based on the information that I got from my pilot survey. So rather than have the long list, I shortened it down. And then in terms of deciding on these names down here, I actually just Google searched the types of refrigerators, and these are the different types that they have. I'm not actually 100% sure what the French door model is. I think that's where you have a veggie drawer as well. So apparently it exists, and some of my friends had them. So what I'm going to get you to do now is I'm going to just stop sharing in a minute and put this link in. But what we're going to look at is what we think the data will show. So we're going to go back and just think about these 2 questions. So what was the make of the fridge and what type of fridge? And I just want you to have a think about our group. What do you think might have been some of what we might see when we look at the data? And this is about getting the kids to start making some predictions or thinking about what the data might show before they actually look at the data. Okay, so I'm going to drop the link for the Padlet into the chat. And then I'm going to get you to go in, and I'll just give you a minute to write some ideas up. Oh, and the other big thing I want is why. That's something that we don't always ask the kids. We say, what do you think the data will show? But actually, I'd like you to tell me about why as well. So let me just scroll back down. What do you think the data will show and why? Okay, I'll stop screen sharing so you can go in. So again, I'd really encourage everyone to at least have a guess about what they think the data will show. Okay, so I'm going to reshare my screen, which I'm sure you can all do. So we're getting some, it's really nice we're seeing really, educated guesses about what we think the data might show and a reason for it. So I think that's really nice. And often the kids will go, I think, like somebody's got there, I think that we'll have fridge freezers because that seems to be what most of my friends have. So they'll usually base it on their own anecdotal knowledge or that they have. All right, so we're going to go back to the slides so I can just keep myself on track. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually show you, I'm going to take the data we collected and I'm going to put it into Codep and just quickly show you how to do that, and then you can have a play with the data. That's the plan. So I'm just going to bring the data set over. I've tidied it up a little bit. I got rid of the timestamp. And if I was working with students and I'd collected information that was identifiable, I would have deleted that before I work with it. But what we do, this is in a Google Sheet, so I need to save it as a CSV file. So I'm going to do that first. And I'm just put it on my desktop. All right, okay, now I'm not going to assume anybody's seen Codep, but I'm just going to go in and start using it because I'm going to share a link with you. So Codep is a common online data analysis platform. And when I click try Codep, it says, do you want to open a document or create a new one? And I want to create a new one. And the thing that I love about my system is that this CSV I've downloaded is there. So I can click and drag that into what's called Codep. And that in a moment is going to put that data that we've just collected in there. So I can actually start playing with that. I'm just going to save. You won't need to do this, but I will just save it so you can access it. I'm going to call it Fridge Pickers. And now, because I've saved it, I can share it with you. And that was the key thing I wanted to be able to do. So I'm going to get a link to a shared view. I need to enable sharing. If I copy that link, close, close. And now if I find the chat, and I'm going to not find the chat. Where have I hidden the chat? I can't find the chat anywhere on my screen.
Oh. Not down the bottom?
And I'll probably find it when I... There it is. Okay, I'm going to drop that link into the chat, which means you can all go in. If you click on that link I've just given you in the chat, you should be able to go in and get the document that I'm showing you. But if you need your screen, let me just show you quickly how to graph. So if you click on graph, and then you drag and drop the variables. So I'm going to look at the stuff we did before. I can drag it variable into the graph. And then if I want to look at the ages, like we did, I can put the points there by the age for the position in the family. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. If you click on the link, that will take you to your own version of the document, and you can have a play with the what make of fridge and what type of fridge data. So I'll stop sharing and let you go and do that. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to have a play. If you've got any questions, just come online and talk to me and I'll help you.
Mummy, you did something to it.
What do I do? What do you mean I did something to it?
Yes.
Mm.
That.
I don't, oh, no.
It's when you lifted it up.
Oh, okay.
It's done now, Mum.
Here we are. Okay.
It happens when you lift it up.
Yeah. I've got to go back in. Where was I? Oh, I was in here. There we are.
Okay, I'm assuming no news is good news. So I'm going to give you another minute and hopefully you've had a chance to make a graph with the data that's there. And if you have, if you click on, there's a little icon that says text. If you click on text, that will give you a text box and you could start writing some I notice statements about what you notice in the data that you've got about the make and the type of fridge people have. Okay, I'm going to stop you there and I'm going to just reshare my screen with you. Okay, so just going to show a couple of little things. For example, I'm not really enjoying this big long thing that's got the big long label. So I'm just going to, I can click on the attribute and rename it, and I'm just going to call this make of fridge. So it's a little bit clearer on my graphs. And you'll see that when I changed it, the label has changed on my graph. And on this one here, I'm going to rename that to type of fridge. All right, and you can see again, the type of fridge has changed on those ones where I have. So I've made a few graphs here. So I've got one that just shows the make of fridge. I've got one that just shows the type of fridge. And then this one here, I've actually put make of fridge on one side and type of fridge on the other. And I can see the connection between the two. So for example, if I go back to our predictions that we had, I can see the most common, which is Fisher and Paykel and bottom mount. And I vaguely remember somebody said we'll have fridge freezers and most people have Fisher and Paykel. See, and they'll have a fridge freezer combination. Okay, it wasn't lots, but it was the most common with 2 of our 9 people having it. So well done those people for that guessing. So in this one here, I've also put the position in the family. I could equally have put the position. No, I can't. I'm not going to say that there. Now, I just want to show you something else that Codep does. If I was to highlight all the Fisher and Paykel people in this graph here, you'll notice that they've been highlighted in this graph. They've been highlighted in this graph by being blue, and they've been highlighted in this graph. So I can actually say that the 3 people that own Fisher and Paykels also like to pick dairy. All right, so that's one of the lovely things that Codep allows you to do. And if you've got your text box up, you can see you can start to type things in there. If I was doing this with students and I was using a pre-existing data set, I would have probably put a lot of prompts in the text box before I share the document with them. But it's a really quite a quick tool to get some visuals up. So I'm just going to go back to here. And we've done that. So that's just I did the brief demo, and there is a link there which you can have a look at later. That just helps you. Actually, I have got it open here. If you go in, I've got a little Google Doc that I've set up that people can copy and share with their kids, and that just has a series of videos that helps kids get started with Codep. And I made it during COVID, so it's designed for kids. So it's, yeah, so that's there, and you can access that anytime. And as I say, make a copy and modify it for your own students, feel free. Okay, so just carrying on with the thing. So we've looked at using Codep, and then we would have, sorry, I'll just go back there, and then we would have written a report. So that's the middle part of the unit. And then the last part of the unit, the last session, is looking at the data that they collected at home, and I signaled that earlier. But what the little home investigation is it's looking at fridge pick, how often people pick from the fridge. And I think that you actually would do more than just fridge picking. You'd say every time somebody goes to the fridge, they record it. And so depending on what you want to do with your students, for example, I could set it up so everybody puts their initial each time they go to the fridge within a certain hour group. And then I can look at not just how many people went in or which was the most popular time, but actually who went in and things like that. And we can also look at the number of times. You know, I could say, well, now I can tell you how many times my fridge was opened in a day, and all those sorts of things can come off that data. So that's the wrap-up activity from the fridge pickers. So I just want to look briefly at the other investigations that have been updated. So I will have updated level 4 and 5 also by the end of the year. It's just fitting everything in around what else is going on. That's the link to all of them. So at level 1, there's 2 activities in there. The I Like Trucks, which is a one which looks at kids' favourite toys. So they bring their favourite toys in, and the Greedy Cat one. And these ones here have just had some minor tweaks to make sure the language is consistent with the New Zealand curriculum. So most of these activities, not all of them, but some of them have been around for a while, and they're still very good in terms of interest for kids. Level 2, I've got 4 big ones here that I've done quite a bit of work on, and I'm going to go into probably have a quick look at both of these and just show you how the descriptions of the mathematics has been updated, but also all of the updated activities on nzmaths, not just the stats one, but the number and algebra and geometry and measurement, have got opportunities for adaptation and differentiation, and I'll show you that quickly. And then within these 2 in particular, the PPDAC cycle is really clear in the task to help teachers. So I'm just going to, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go back here and escape. So if I've got this right, so here's the parties and favourites. I'm just going to scroll through it. So the description of maths, you'll see there's things like investigative questions, survey questions, analysis questions. So that language that Chris was talking about this morning, her and I have been doing a lot of work on that. And then pictograph, bar graph, tally chart. So those descriptions are in there, but this is the bit that you'll notice is new in most of the activities now, is that how do you differentiate it? So some examples, maybe giving the kids category data or whole number data, depending on whether you want to go up or down. And then the idea that you can take the unit and modify it to better represent your students in your class. And then I'm just going to flick through it, but you'll see here that really highlighting the PPDAC cycle as you go through the activity, so problem and then plan. Right, so hopefully that will make it easier for teachers. And similarly in this one here, so a little bit about dot plots, so some things are similar, but we've got this problem again, you know, really emphasizing that is what we're looking at. And then similarly, I'm not gonna go to thing. So similarly for level 3, so at level 3, we've looked at the fridge pickers, but if you want to look at more about using Codep, if you go into the level 3 stats investigations activity, again, I'm gonna just quickly scroll through. So similar things to what we've seen before. But you'll see here, again, the problem is being identified quite clearly, and there's a lot of work there around developing the investigative question, and then more work about planning, about doing surveys and how we might manage them. And then the analysis. So in here is quite a little bit of guidance. So rather than this being in every level 3 activity, I focused on putting the big bit of information in the planning one there. So hopefully you'll find that useful. And then just sort of to finish up, I just wanted to just talk to people about other sources of stats activities. So obviously nzmaths is a go-to place, and I'm very biased but would recommend you go there. And Census at Schools also has resources. So when you go into Census at Schools, this is your front page, and then if you click on resources for teaching statistics, you'll see that there's the different levels are in there. So that's a good place to go. And then one of the pieces of work that the NZ Stats Association Education Committee has been working on is the Statistics and Data Science Educator. And I'm just going to share this one activity that I did for level 3. So keeping in thing, this is what pets do the kids in our class have. So it's not the only activity on there. I think if I go to home, you'll see that there's a lot of lesson plans, and they're at different levels. So they're doing about 4 a year. So they've all been peer reviewed. So that's a worthwhile place to look at. But the thing about the pets, one like the fridge pickers activity, is that you get categorical data and whole number data. So lots of opportunities there for people to explore. And I'm going to post this link into the chat in a moment, and you can get straight into these slides now for viewing, but I will also, they'll be available when the recording goes up online. So yeah, so any questions? I'll stop sharing and post the link.
Thank you very much. Anybody who's got a question, just unmute yourself and ask it. Pip will be glad to answer any questions. Looking through the people are introducing themselves, and then they were all involved with your Padlet and Codep. So, yeah.
Shirley, did you want me to show the drag and drop again?
It's okay. I'll go into your document. If you could share that document that you mentioned, I'll go in and do what the students have to do.
I will. I can just show you really quickly. It'll take like 30 seconds. Here's my graph. All right, and I grab the attribute and I drag it and I drop it into the graph. And in fact, if I'm just doing one variable, I can just drop it into the middle of the graph. Okay?
Okay, I'll have that. Thanks,
That's
Pip.
what I mean by drag and drop.
Is this made by the people who did Tinker Plots, Pip?
So it's actually Fathom. So Bill Finzer is the senior scientist, and he was involved with Tinker Plots as well, and he was Fathom. So there is elements of Tinker Plots in it, and there's elements of Fathom, and it gets, because it's, their plan is for it to be freely available online forever. So it basically grows as big research projects have money to have something developed. So if I just quickly share again, just for those that are interested, they have these things like they have plugins. So for example, they have a sampler, which allows you to do probability experiments. Actually, let me go onto a clean screen. So if you want to do some stuff on probability, you can, like if I go start, it will show you collecting 5 items, and then it does 3 samples. So I'll just make that faster. Or I can change that from a mixer to a spinner. So if you're looking at doing probability investigations, you can in there. And they also, if you go into a new document, so this is surely where I'd recommend, you know, people go to start with, but I was just, you guys are advanced learners, we're just jumping in the deep end. There's this really cool one called Getting Started with Codep. If you go into that, that has a little video that you watch and it shows you how to do all the bits. So, you know, it goes show me, and then it shows you what to do, and you follow it, and then you get to do stuff. So all of that's in the handout anyway, which is here. And you can find that handout. I'll just copy that link into the chat again.
Right. Well, thank you, Pip, for all the help that people have got with this. It's interesting that when it's new to you, then you can see things which are quite like other things. So that, you know, you think, oh, I feel quite confident. If I went in, I'd play the introduction, and gradually I would be confident enough to use it in the classroom.
Yes.
So I hope other people will manage that.
Gillian, can I just jump in? I have used it with Year 5 students. So my sister-in-law was teaching Year 5s last year, and I said to her, can I come and play with her kids? And, you know, by the end of the session, we were probably 30 minutes. They were pretty much all confidently using it. So don't be afraid to let kids play with it. And in fact, you don't have to show them much, because they will find out how to change the colors, how to make the font bigger, all of that way before we ever do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, that they tend just to have a go. So, yeah, so thank you, Pip. It was a lovely watching you build things and how you used your camera. You're obviously very technically able there, which was lovely. It's nice to see, isn't it, that you can actually use something which, like a camera, and make it so personal. And when you were doing Zooms, that must have helped that, I'm sure. So thank you very much. If there are no other questions, I'll just go on and talk a little bit about AMA, if everybody's okay.